All right, I got Sonya McVay. She's the founder of the Six. They specialize in post-traumatic fitness and it's a rehab clinic specializing in post-traumatic fitness and sports therapy and cognitive behavioral health that specializes in serving veterans and first responders. Sonya, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, excited to talk to you about what you've done and what you've been building for many, many years to come. And, you have a soft spot for me being a former first responder and just all the good work that you're doing. But I was curious just to jump things off. Like, was there a personal experience that shaped this vision, this mission that we call the Six now? And was there like a pivotal moment that led to this creation?
Yeah, there's several because it's really my whole heart, and I've known that this was my population since I was a young girl. I come from a pretty traumatic early childhood, and one of the kind of the stories that shaped me feeling passionate about people that put themselves on the line was having a report turned into the police department that had to do with assault with me and my twin brother that ended up in us getting removed from our home and gave both of us a new lease on life. We are both the first generation not to be addicts in our family, and had really just a beautiful adoption story from a really dark situation. That's not something you can shake. So in my mind, even before that happened, as a little girl, I would imagine and have just like huge full heart gratitude towards your people that would come and do something like that. It took about 5 years, and then I had an incredible experience post that with my mom and dad and family that raised me. That really was the beginning of it. As I started really exploring my career in sports rehab and in fitness, I did have another moment where I was sitting in the paddock for Ferrari. They had flown me to Daytona to do sports rehab. I was really young, and it was supposed to be like this incredible life-changing thing. I had made it, and I remember distinctly hearing about how it was costing like $6 million to run these cars, and hearing about just the industry and who I was treating, and knowing that the blue collar people, my people could never afford, rehab that would, quote, like fix somebody and put them back into their job. And it was like this gut wrenching moment because I had thought for a long time that I was going to land, and I was so excited about this opportunity. And then I turned my whole life upside down when I came home. Alongside that, I had the opportunity to live in Romania for almost 2 years and support rehabbing orphans that had gone through extreme discomfort, being like tied to cribs and things like that in the mountains. And when they had a rehab specialist coming through, I don't even know if he was certified or not, but he would come do like manual manipulation and just a joint mode, and their whole little hearts would just light up, and it was quite moving. And sort of with a combination of those experiences, I got clear about who I wanted to serve and how I wanted to impact the world. And here I am. So, yeah.
That's okay. That's amazing. And by the way, there's so many different modalities when it comes to sports rehab. There's ART, occupational therapy. There's so many. What was your specialty? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so my very first specialty was actually spinal pathologies in the Pilates world. I was a master Pilates instructor. It took me, I think I was maybe 20, 23, because I was just hit it hard running after, you got to get 10,000 hours of time practicing. So that was my first really pitch into the rehabilitation world. And then I got full body ART certified and started to be able to do things like Ironman and more clinical treatment. The first doctor I worked for actually told me I couldn't teach Pilates anymore because she wanted me to learn hands-on work. And that experience was crazy because I'm not a doctor. I had no background even in manual therapy. And I just decided I was going to go. And I failed the first test. I got like an 87, I think. You got to get a 90. And everybody's like, why are you here? I had no massage experience. I had no reason to be there. And I said, because I'm supposed to be here. And I went back and got over 100% every other test that I took until I was full body. And I knew that it was going to change my life. And within, I think, a year of that, I had quadrupled my income and started down the path of opening a shop up for this medicine to be accessible for my people. So
Wow, that's amazing. I remember there was a high level LAPD, a SWAT guy. He was like a Green Beret, and I had met him at a training that I was doing for some type of law enforcement self defense training, and he was one of the trainers. And he said he had hurt his back, and part of his recovery was Pilates. He had to pay for it. He ended up getting the department to pay, but he said, Joel, he's like, this guy has done multiple different therapies, high level CrossFit athlete. And he's like, Pilates, if I could do that every day, if I could afford it, he said, I would do it every day. It is like the one thing that like cured my back and like got it better. So that's really, really powerful. And then ART, I got into the world of ART, not as a practitioner, but just as someone who was injured and hurt doing jujitsu, law enforcement, having all these issues. And I learned about it from Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Body. And he was talking about how he had used that to unlock and unglue a lot of tissues and things that were attached. And so I saw an ART practitioner in San Francisco for a long time, and she would scrape and do all kinds of things. And I got tremendous results. So ART is one of my favorites.
Yeah, in his book, he actually mentions, I believe, Pat Pizzenti, who really was the godfather of ART in my area. He's absolutely brilliant. He teaches for ART now. That book really impacted the practice. It's blown up since I started. It was many years ago.
Yeah. Now at the 6, I know you guys do everything's it's a holistic model, right? We're looking at physical and mental health treatments. But on that note of just because we're talking about the physical, I'm wondering why do we support our first responders and veterans through the physical aspect? Like, what big deal, Sonya? Like, what does that have to do with mental health? Like, mentally, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I have whatever these issues, PTSD. I'm curious, why add that physical component, or like the ART, the occupational therapy? If someone's listening, why would they say, yeah, I have PTSD, I don't need you scraping me or ungluing stuff? What would you say to these people?
Yeah, that's a multi-layered question. I didn't intend, to be honest, when I started to layer in the cognitive and mental health fitness as much as it's a part of who we are now. I found that as I really leaned into the rehab and the performance space, I started with combat vets, that the idea of understanding the job of somebody that has a high performance job where they have to be hypervigilant or on guard all the time, where there is sleep stress, where there's just way more tax on the nervous system than in the civilian space. It actually was not scientifically sound to not do both together. The nervous system runs your physical body. And what ended up happening that was beautiful, that again, I don't know that I intended to, but I knew made scientific sense, was to lean into both. What happened from me sort of pulling the lever in the physical space was that we were getting incredible results by then talking about both. But the container that I was bringing it into, if you will, with our population was really, really simple. Hey, if you're an NFL player and you haven't slept for a week, how do you perform? Not well, right? So it took all of the stuff that you would imagine our populations resist and made it tangible and put it into a package that wasn't like, hey, I don't like that. So I never came in like, let's talk about PTSD or let's talk about home stress. I did talk about how do you close the loop when you have to high perform. So it was great that I had worked with fighters and race car drivers and people that have to be on really, really at a high level and start to marry the idea of that into the responder space.
Yeah, and I think it's great because there's a lot of evidence showing that these feelings that we have, feelings and emotions, a lot of times they get trapped in the body and we see it manifest physiologically. Yep. And I think the way I love to just simply put it is, think of someone who's confident. Typically, someone who's confident, they're smiling, their posture is upright, their shoulders are back. But if you see someone who's sad or depressed, their body manifests this hunched over position, they're kyphotic, their head is down, they're drooping, and that physiology changes the way you feel and the way you go out and act and make decisions. So to your point, I think from that sports performance area, if we're just ungluing Joel's trap, for example, if I'm holding a lot of stress and pain and I'm not sleeping right, and you're unlocking some of that, holy cow, like that literally could be an emotional release. And then there's books like The Body Keeps the Score and all these other books where, we
Sure.
talk about some of these fundamentals. So I think it's actually ingenious.
Yeah, yeah, sure. It like you're absolutely right. And we can get like nerdier and nerdier. I call it cooler and cooler because I'm a nerd like that. But there's this combination of understanding that the front of your body is going to get short anytime there's stress. And really, we got to pull apart. Your body doesn't go. Your mind, in terms of performance, doesn't go. Hey, I'm sad. Hey, I'm stressed. Hey, it doesn't pull apart the actual emotion. It just senses something's off. And then you kick into that, a bear's going to come get me. The front of your body is going to get short. Now, sometimes if you're sad and your nervous system is going to, quote, play dead, or get into that fawn space, yes, you get droopy, but usually under high stress, you're going to come forward, muscles are going to get short in the front, and you're going to get ready to run. Right? That's what bodies do just to survive. It's very animal. And then when we add the gear, of a law enforcement officer, the training of a combat vet, the in and out of the engine, when you add things like that, and I understand that as we do now, after 35,000 hours plus of time, we do some really cool sports rehab that I haven't seen anywhere unless it's in the professional sports space, where you have multiple layers of professionals coming in and serving you with instruction about how to be your best, do your best, when they know holistically what's going on with your body.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I love that. And like you said earlier, the nervous system, that's what runs everything.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest, and the nervous system is always constantly looking for threats. It's
Yeah.
always looking to detect that. And that's why even something, from my understanding, even like scraping, the goal of a lot of times with scraping is not necessarily to scrape and like break up scar tissue. There is like the Graston mesh that was, I believe, does do that. But there's other gentler methods of scraping, and we're just changing the proprioception and the way that the body perceives how it moves in time and space. And if we can change that by changing the nervous system, then you can literally change the way you walk, move, talk, and be out in the real world. And so, yeah, I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, there's lots of tooling for that. I use KT tape for that. I've done all kinds of weird stuff. I've got people in uniforms a lot. I've been on fire lines a lot. I've put Cheerios in people's shoe before and said, "Don't let your foot lift off of this," to change their gait. I mean, I've done some weird stuff, and it's fun. It's been I've been like so honored to build my dream job, and now grow at the level that we're growing. So I have the information that allows me to make it enjoyable. And relatable, and it's an honor to teach our populations about their bodies in a way that makes them excited. It's going for that win when you didn't know that there is one. Oftentimes, people will notice discomfort. We can talk about a law enforcement officer and not really realize that they're totally normal. For instance, one of my favorite things to do when I'm going in and training a bunch of new cadets is say like, "Hey, imagine what would happen," and everybody kind of laughs. I have to watch my language, but imagine what would happen if somebody was asphyxiating you for hours and hours and hours a day. What would you do? And you see Batman come out, or Wonder Woman, right? And I'm like, right, that's what's happening to your body all day. As soon as you put that vest on, right? And who likes that? And half of them raise their hand. I love getting choked. Like, blah. But we talk about it, and usually you see this aha moment where I'm like, if you came up to somebody and you took away 10% of their oxygen all day long, physiologically, what's going on? How do you think you're responding? Have you considered what happens when you start to inhibit your movement? Like, what if I put you in a straitjacket and you couldn't rotate? What if you sat in the same exact spot at a weird rotation for 10 hours a day, which is what they're doing, all day? But the way you relate to it all of a sudden changes, and you live in possibility instead of feeling like maybe you're crazy and maybe I don't know, this is normal but it's not normal. And we just talk about it and paint the picture. This is what happens to your body. I would get very grumpy if somebody was inhibiting movement, taking oxygen away, and if you're feeling like that, That's why you should take a breather perhaps before you go and you play, soccer dad, or you got to go home and cook dinner, whatever it is that you're doing. And that gives a lot of mental freedom when we start talking about the physical implications on a nervous system. They're like, oh, yay, okay, I'm normal. It's okay.
Yeah, and I was just thinking too, having been a police officer with that heavy 30-pound gun belt and that rig, and I know one thing for me that happened over time, because you mentioned this shortening of the muscles and the front of
Mm-hmm.
my body. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I've had psoas issues for years, and I'm sure a
Yep.
lot of cops have had those psoas, tight psoas that shorten because of sitting all day in a freaking car.
Yep.
And and then I learned later that I think the psoas is a very unique muscle group that actually ties in back to the spine, like T12. And again, that ties into the emotional system. So to your
Yep.
point, yeah, wow.
Absolutely. A lot of that has to do with breath too. So that there's two psoas as it's bilateral. It attaches to more muscles than any other muscle in your body. So we're going to go from the pubic bone all the way anterior, all the way to your back, to those 10th and 12th ribs. That's what you're talking about. It crosses over everything. When those get short, it's a nice way to get a back injury, and it's a nice way to inhibit your breath pattern. So again, if you're living in a short breath pattern and you're inhibited from that, what happens to your nervous system? So a lot of our community gets, hammered for feeling like short-tempered, and while we should be held accountable as leaders, also there's being a human and having permission for that and having the tools to go, okay, right on, this is part of my job. How do I perform better? What does that mean? And it can be as simple as stretching your hips out and doing some breath work. And the way for our people I found to receive that is to deliver that straight up sports rehab. Yeah. I'm not going to put crystals on your belly, although if that's your jam, bless you. But for the most part, we have learned the language of our people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about the physical aspect of some of the things that you're doing. I know it goes beyond just
Yeah.
the body work. There's much more. But talk about this holistic model that you guys have created at the Six that also
Yeah.
includes the mental health, the cognitive behavioral health, also that really makes it unique for veterans and first responders.
Yeah. So about a year in, when I was really studying the space of combat and rehab, and I started realizing how much we must tap into the mental part of this, I found that what was missing in all my research was how do I close the loop from work to home? There was a lot of home stress that wasn't getting talked about. How do I turn off that hypervigilance when I'm at Costco or when I'm having a baby, like what happens? And in my life, fortunately, I'd had coaches, life coaches, more or less since I was 10. I believe you met a really good friend of mine, Jean Marie Jobs. I started working with her when I was 10 and 12 years old, and was able to close some loop from pretty serious childhood trauma. And I made a request of her and several other high-level coaches. Jean was a responder chaplain, by the way, for 15 years. So I brought in coaches that knew our people to start to see what would happen if I opened them up to our community. And it was absolute magic. And that was really this idea of we're going to leave the therapy space for therapists, but when you come in here and we're relearning how to perform better, what does that look like in a mental space? And these coaches, again, I just want to talk about skill level, are people that are between 500 and multiple thousands of dollars an hour, and we're really not attainable for especially the veteran space, and still a little pricey for our responders. We did it for free. I got them to volunteer and combined the two, and absolute magic happened where we're doing this mental fitness. We're learning just like stress and relaxation techniques, but also learning how to understand, hey, you're in the 1% of the world. How does your mind work? What is a warrior mentality? It's okay. And we since then have continued to have coaches for 10 years here, always available. We were able to get people in the same day usually. And now a huge part of our program and our growth is actually creating in our app an AI driven coaching space. for after you go in and you do a series of physical performance, including HRV and BP. It starts to talk about sleep hygiene, et cetera, and then feeds back with you about perhaps your stress levels, setting goals. We still obviously have in person. I highly believe in both when we use the tool of AI, but marrying the two together has meant that we have the kind of the might of the six, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I gotta ask you because, former first responder, I know 15 years. I know these guys very well. We're alpha males, most of us, very driven to succeed, plan. We're doers. We
Yeah.
don't talk about our feelings. We don't get vulnerable. And I think mental health, especially in the first responder world, it's a huge mental health. It's a stigma. And I told you my story, I had it being an officer-involved shooting the first year and a half out.
Yeah.
And I went back to work within a week and my hands would shake for about 6 months. Now, granted, I saw a shrink that was part of the protocol. And he said, I was like a couple of days after the shooting. And he said, "How you doing?" I said, "Great." And he said, "Awesome." He gave me signed the paperwork and said, "This guy is good to go back out in the field." I was 27 years old. I had no idea what PTSD was. Nobody talked to me. Maybe they did, but it wasn't a big deal back then. Had no idea about what it was. I just knew my hands were shaking and I didn't want to tell anybody because in Oakland, that would have meant I was weak. And I wasn't going to let anybody know that was going on for me. And it probably lasted for 6 months and then it eventually went away. Thank God. So how do you break down veterans, public safety, first responders? How do you break them down to open them up and foster trust and openness in the six?
Yeah. Well, currently when you walk into the brick and mortar shop or when you walk into a team, with the departments we're contracted with, it is evident that we've spent years and years and years with this community. Community trust and safety is a huge deal. The shop, I've had plenty of guys say this feels like, the gym and the sandbox. There is a representation of our community here, and lots of communities, but in terms of our specialty, you walk in the shop and you see all the badges, you hear our language, and you know that we know that we've spent as much time as we have. So I'll say, first of all, that wasn't easy. That took years to break into the community. I'm 100% a civilian. I have been the whole time. I've never said I was anything but that. And it took me time. It was not easy. So, time in community is huge. I know that if you're studying PTSD and you understand it, community integration is one of the only proven things to really actually treat PTSD, is to put people into the care of people that know and understand and let you talk about it. Really, the honest truth is, I never, unless somebody walks in here and says, "Hey, I got a problem," and I've had that happen multiple times. Guys will just walk in, girls will just walk in, sit on the couch, and say, "Hey, I need to be here." People I've never met will do that. For the most part, we use the sports rehab as the open door to have that conversation. The way that the body responds to muscle testing, palpation, the way that I do a good job is to talk about stress and to talk about, do you have a TBI, and to talk about, tell me about your calls. So I'm never coming in with the assumption that somebody has post-traumatic stress. Do I see it a lot? Absolutely. Totally. Can I see it from 80 miles away at this point? Yes. Do I ever come in with that as a lead? No, absolutely not. When I am noticing that somebody feels like they have whiplash or something like that, and we start to have a conversation and information starts to come out, I'm like, how can I support you? If you can get your breath pattern right, if we can help support you, if we can bring you more community, are you up for that? And I can tell you hands down, we've never had a no. Our people here know what they're doing. I really think the secret sauce, if you will, is both the community and the time in. It's oftentimes when I see about failed integration for programs that departments are using, the complaint is that there's not community awareness. So departments are like hiring. There was a local hospital that was running wellness platforms for behavioral health here, and I got told that they asked my responders to stretch before a call. So a call would come in, and they got told to stretch before, and they're so disjointed. And if you look at a lot of these programs that are really popular right now, they've got single-digit use rates. I asked about a PTSD protocol with an app that's pretty popular recently with a department that's close, and they had under 10 total uses in 12 months for behavioral health. And to me, that's where we're disjointed. And I know that it sounds really simple, but hey, my shoulder hurts with an officer that's been in for 10 years. I would assume they've had a call, or a firefighter that's been in. And I'm going to treat that, pay attention, listen. And you can see when they start to relax and say, hey, do you think that this one thing had anything to do with my knee? And I'm like, yeah, totally. And we've had, so much success that the EAP for one of our local departments asked to actually run through the Six Foundation instead of through the department. And the department welcomed it and blessed it. I'm always like, give me feedback. How can we do better? What do we need to do? And as you know, in the area of law enforcement and responders, I love the black and white communication, because then we get to do better. So it's not, I don't run like an EAP program. I never have. Coaching is a huge part of what we do too. So it's not just, hey, let's rehash this call. But how do I move forward? What does it look like? What does step B and C look like? And then I get to meet people like you, and I'm like, okay, cool. I know when an officer comes in and he's having a hard time in his marriage, I have a resource. And I know that the stand for each other is great and is big. So, I say a lot, I'm setting the table, and I have a lot of friends. Keep the community going. As you know, like when you pick up the phone and your teammate was there, your partner was there at the same call, and you know that you share that, that's a big deal. It's a big deal. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Talk about some of the, and we've already kind of highlighted it, but just some of the other innovative therapies that you guys are doing, other than just cognitive behavioral therapy, which I think if anybody hears that, they just think of like, oh, that's probably like talk therapy. And we mentioned ART, and we mentioned some of the body work, but any new and exciting stuff that you guys are bringing in? And you mentioned AI as well. So any other tech or things that you guys are doing?
Yeah, there's a lot. So in terms of on the floor, we run probably about 20 different kinds of body work. We just brought in PEMF, which is an electromagnetic stimulator, and that is really amazing. Really, more or less, it's stimulating regrowth. So we do use it for post-traumatic stress, right at the amygdala. Give a little reset in there. It's been great. We use it for soft tissue injury, any injury, and total stress. It's been amazing. We have a physical therapist running that. We did just hire physical therapy and put in a new tech company to start having diagnostics on the floor. That's been amazing. We run ultrasound, which has its own Wi-Fi. So I travel to departments, I travel to fire lines with that, so I can see soft tissue injuries. We don't diagnose with most of our team, but we're starting to be able to do that, which is exciting. We've had acupuncture for a long time. I'm a huge believer in that for both treating behavioral stress injury and soft tissue. The dream for me right now is to start bringing in vitamin bags, and then one day see if we can start bringing in stem cell and PRP. There's some really great homeopathic treatment that doesn't get enough airtime, in my opinion. And when we put it in the container of rehab, and we have it all in one space where we can treat somebody at a high level and then reteach them how to move, it's beautiful. So that's where we're headed in terms of that. We also have a full MMA gym that I co-branded with. It's inside this gym to teach people basically how to take a hit, if you will, and then really encourage what does non-lethal force look like? How do I do that in a uniform? We have a lot of testing in and out of uniform which is more or less jiu-jitsu based, about how do I protect myself? What does this look like? How do I protect, I want to say my client, but bad guy, what does that look like? And that's been going really great too. The AI part on the background, I'd say the big project is that I just merged with a company called Shift, and they are and us are combining all of my sports screens for fire, law enforcement, combat, and so on and so forth, with behavioral coaching. So what that looks like is something that's also embedded HRV, which is heart rate variability, BP. It runs you through a screen of physical tests that are compared with what's the tactical implication, how come I need to do this, It compares it to workers' comp injuries, which is huge. We've got departments that are 20, 30, 40, 50% out on workers' comp right now, and says, hey, this is the injury that likely is going to happen if you start to score here. And then it gives you a whole entire program, including that coaching piece. All of it then in this same app will say, here's the community, here's how you find us, here's the in-person people that we recommend. But most of it is tooling for the responder to be able to have access right now to a good and great cognitive and sports plan. So, and then most of it actually doubles as homework too, and the AI part catches up with how you move, how you think, your sleep patterns, and it's married into the brick and mortar of the six and to our community, and it's so cool. That should be out in 60 to 90 days in a beta, and I'm just thrilled.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, there's just so much you could do proactively and preemptively. I mean, you could be in academies getting to people before they even hit the streets and say, you already are manifesting these symptoms. So if you don't take care of this now, imagine 10 years down the road with this
Yeah.
body type, how you're moving, how you're breathing, etc. You know, you can get way ahead of the curve, and this can be more longevity for officers in the future. So that's really cool. And I was just thinking, I would have loved to have had that app for myself, just because I'm a go-getter, and I've worked so many nights of just overtime and shift work and being like, I'm fine. I'm working just fine on 4 hours of sleep. I know it's not ideal, but I'll eventually catch up. And it'd be interesting to have metrics to track me and go, dude, you are not fine. You are not fine. You need to course correct way sooner than you think.
Yeah, that the sleep. I mean, I hear that all the time, and there's been an uptick I'm noticing in like TRT use, testosterone for law enforcement. I'm seeing that specifically, and after physiologically, after you start kind of sleeping under 5 hours a night, your testosterone drops. And then when we talk about loneliness epidemic and stress and all of this, so I've been hitting that one hard, especially with our young guys. Like, hey, let's actually get a little more practical than this. And that they've received it willingly. I'm like, hey, let's try something else on. You're 27, but I am seeing drops in T quite a bit. I'm seeing really low levels, like 120 with young men. And the stress, the stress and the not sleeping really hits it hard. And then they're wondering, like, how come I can't mentally get there? Like, what's going on? So, and there's all these things that are so lovely to tie into the sports world, because it's not, it's tangible. It's not anything that says, hey, you're not doing a good job. It just says, this is what your physical body is doing. And guess what? There's so much hope, and you're doing amazing. We're just going to figure this out. And the prevention part, you hit that right on. In our country as a whole, we've really dropped the idea of preventative medicine. And it's times 10 in the responder and combat space. And I am interrupting that and saying this community has to drive times 10. Let's turn up the prevention. And our use rates are off the hook. We've got departments with 75, 80% use rates and growing. That's not even heard of. And what I'm certain of is it's because I took the time, to get to know what I was doing. My team is amazing. They know what they're doing. But I mean, we love you guys too. Like this full well, it becomes your family. And I want to see culture change. So when I do get to go in again and talk to those new cadets, we're talking about prevention. But the first thing I say is, why are you here? And often they talk about this idea of legacy. And I'm like, okay, well, the lifespan for a detention officer is 57. So in terms of legacy, that's not long enough, is it? And we really ground in, how come I'm here when that call comes in, and I haven't communicated with my family my why, and I haven't communicated with my partner my why, and I don't remember why. Then why are you, what's the motivation? Then you get sad and stressed. So we really talk about the sports space again almost on both sides from a cognitive perspective, so that when they come in, I have enough relationship with them now, or when they're really accessing use of the app, there's a holistic experience that regrounds them and how come they're here, which is a huge deal with stress injuries, and then says, hey, let's go, let's be your best. And as you know, when there's wins, even when they're small, it's a really big deal. It's a really big deal to have that win when you're struggling, or have that why. And it's just a really big deal in general for me that our country gets healthy and that our people in this space get healthy. I don't like 57. you know?
Yeah, that's atrocious. I heard that stat. I mean, it might have been you I was talking to, and I couldn't believe that it was 57. I mean, just
57,
unreal.
58. Yeah.
And I know so many guys, and so do you, that they retire at 55 and they're dead in 2 years. It's just,
Yep.
they worked such a long time to build that legacy, and you think, for what? I mean, this is what it was. This is what it came down to. All those nights not being around your kids and family,
Yeah.
and it's terrible.
Yeah. Well, we're coming. I'm like, all right, let's change a nation. Firm believer that it only takes one person, and then build the community out. Many people ask, and say like, this community won't show up, and they have shown up in such impactful ways. They show up for each other. There's absolute magic in the shop every day, and I am just floored about being able to expand, being able to build new programs out. The sheriff's office, which we're in contract with, it's the first time they've ever had a platform like this in the history of the sheriff's office. And I walked into a department that was 50% out last year, and our use rate is off the hook. And we are learning, and their management staff is just blowing my mind. They're just really committed to something new. And I keep on just looking for partners and departments to let us come in and do this differently. I know it's possible because it's happening, and it has for 10 years. It's just a huge honor.
Yeah, I love what you're doing, because I've seen that from working for two big departments. A lot of times we see the leaders, the so-called leaders, try to bring in these outside programs, but a lot of times, like you said, they're just so disconnected from who we are and what we do. It never lands. And it just feels like they're offering us, they say, oh, we're offering you this whatever mindset or this kind of like coaching, but it just falls flat typically all the time, because there's so much disconnection. These people don't know who we are. They don't know how to talk to us. And there's no, like you said, there is no use rate. Nobody's using whatever they're doing. And so it's always available, but no one's using it. So who cares?
Yeah. Anytime I open an app, because I get asked to screen a lot of stuff now, and the front is like a brand new pair of turnouts with a male model and like a police car in the back, I'm like, oh, I'm like, our guys are gonna put this away like right now before they even open it. It's just so it's just interesting, and the public doesn't know. I think they're still waiting for Spot the dog and the male model and the firefighter outfit, and I think people think that officers are just getting into fights all the time. When force rates across the country are like single digit, it's just like a really interesting public perception that comes out. And I'm like, that guy's a soccer dad, and he spent 8 hours in Costco and then just sat in his patrol car for 17 hours eating chips. There's like this huge disconnect, and it's just evident in a lot of the programs. And it doesn't prepare you for when that call comes. And I'm like, prevention. And I'm a massive proponent of enrolling your family, right? Because you do miss them. But if you and your partner share a vision, and you've had the courage and the vulnerability to say, this is my why. And a paycheck's a great why. I'm like, dude, feed your family. Hell yeah, feed your family. The support is going to be much bigger. So.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. In San Francisco, they handed us this book upon graduating the academy. It's called Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement by Dr. Gil Martin. And it was pretty much stated to us, give this to your wife so she knows that in the next 3 years, you guys are going to get a divorce. I mean, that was a jokingly thing. I don't think anybody from the academy said that, but that was kind of the idea, right? It's like, yeah, this book is going to explain why your husband or significant other spouse is so screwed up. But there's no real solutions here. It's just, this is why. And what a terrible thing to say, right? So having the family, again, you mentioned it, community, collaboration, having the family on board and bringing that holistic approach, so good.
Yeah, for me, the sentence I say a lot, and I always encourage people to bring their families in. So it's great because I get partners and dogs and kids, and like bring your whole tribe in, and they come. Uh, the huge pull apart I've said to couples a lot is that the person in the space of responder, generally there's a love language that says I would die for you, and that's the driver. And many people don't think like that, but it's how you have to think. I would die for you. Your partner and you share that at work, right? Your team and you share that at work. And then when you go home and your partner's language is, I would live for you, there's a huge disconnect right there. But also, it's this really, really beautiful team effort that can happen when you're both taking a stand is that big. And if you can get vulnerable enough to talk about what does that mean? When you're in a filter every single day of I would die for you, what does that mean? How do you make decisions, right? How do you make choices? How do you build out? And when you go home to your partner, okay, well, how do you make decisions? How do you build your life out that way? It's this really stunning yin and yang. And in successful responder couples, I think it's one of the most special marriages that you can see because it's a powerful, powerful stand. Talk about for community, right? When you have, it's almost like, I don't know, you could say peanut butter and jelly, right? It's just perfect. It's just perfect. But we don't live in a really connected society anymore where people really sit down and talk. But it's pretty incredible when somebody chooses, I'm going to run into fire for a job or I'm going to go to war. And again, even if it's to feed your kids, it's still something that you have to sit and wonder about every day. And so, typically we have that conversation. It's not a book, but I've spent a lot of time and just that word pull apart. I've seen really incredible results in my personal coaching with our people from that. And then defining, okay, hypervigilance is cool at work. Is it cool at home? How do you close the loop there? Right? You have to have it at work. Please be vigilant at work because we want you to come home, but maybe don't sit in the corner in the dark at home, right? Because that's weird for your kids. It scares them. Daddy, what are you waiting for? Everyone! Right? So it's this letting people be human, going like, hey, this is an incredible gift at work. You are incredible. Please compartmentalize at work. And then when you're at home in the garage, turn it down, buddy. It's this really, really special place to tell people, hey, you are in the quote warrior class. You are totally normal. This is how to communicate outside of that with people that just don't filter this way. And I really move away from, that call was too hard or, my spouse can't handle it. I don't like the rhetoric around a lot of where behavioral health has landed for responders, and I actually don't agree with most of it. I'm like, nope, use your words, responder.
Yeah, so true. And you're right. I think, and that's what makes you so great and disruptive in a good way. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, and that's why we're flipping the paradigm on its
Yeah.
head, literally, because I can think of so many times too. And I just think of a lot of guys in the world that I know, and then they run into these blocks, these marriage blocks. And it's like, the excuse is kind of like, well, you knew this when you met me. And so did my wife. She knew that fully well. Like I was already a police officer when she met me. So I could easily, that's a cop out, right? To say,
Yeah.
oh, well, you knew this is what you got into and stuff. It doesn't matter. Like, yes, they got into the relationship with you because damn it, they love you. And there's something there. But just say like, yeah, what I see too is it just isolates and depresses you more because you have no outlet. You can't express anything when you get home. You can't even emote because you're still in the hypervigilance cycle. You're not even getting out of it, to your point. So yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, it is. To me, one of the best skills of a great officer or a great responder is actually listening, right? Like your job is to de-escalate or to bring hope when there's a hopeless situation all the time. I'm like, turn that shit up when you go home, dude. It's literally your job to listen so well that you catch the bad guy or that you calm everybody down, that you don't have to resort to anything violent. Everybody goes home safe, right? That's literally your job. And I'm like, what if that was your job in your living room? What if you listened so well that you brought everything down to calm and that you brought hope to that space, right? I mean, you are fully capable of doing both. I know that that you are. And in that case, you don't have to pull them apart. It's just not in a command sense. But the listening skill doesn't change just because you're not in charge. And I say that very loudly to a lot of very tough men. You have the same skill when you're not in charge, you know?
Yeah, it's so interesting as you're saying that. I'm just thinking, it's different from a mindset perspective.
Yep.
Officers, men really need to change their paradigm because when they go to work, they know it's not safe. Matter of fact, they're putting on gear because
Yep.
they know they're going into battle and it's not
Yep.
safe. When you
Yep.
come home, though, the paradigm is this is my safe place. I get to lay down and relax my guard. But if you come home and kids are running around crazy and they're yelling and you need some space and your wife is moody because she's missed you all day, but she doesn't know how to express herself,
Yep.
immediately you get triggered because the idea is this was supposed to be a safe place. I'm supposed to come home and be greeted and everything's supposed to be nice, but guess what? It's not sometimes. And that's life.
Right.
So I think there's that stress side, there's that expectation effect of they're thinking, expecting things to go a certain way and they don't, their expectations get crushed. But I love what you said. It's like, hey, you got to, that same leader quality that you take to work, bring it back home into the family.
Right. And again, like there's word definition, Joel, where safe space doesn't mean lack of problem solving. Right? So to me, what's fair is to have that conversation with your spouse. Hey, I feel really exhausted from problem solving every second that I've got that uniform on. And maybe you create something that you need around that. And I hear that language a lot. Man, I go home and there's no rest for my mind, right? Of course you're tasked out. You've had to make decisions, especially in a command sense, all day long, especially to stay safe. And so it's just getting clear about what that means. What does being safe mean? And I'm sure, most partners want their partners to feel safe. And I think that that's a really powerful conversation to have with your spouse when you're a person that puts on a badge and a uniform every day. What does safety mean? And I also speak for myself as a woman with a badass partner. I can feel my nervous system and my brain almost totally shut off around him. We were like bopping around Mexico and he's like, where are we? I don't know. And I really had no idea. And I'm a CEO. I work with cops, right? I'm a tough girl. And then around him, my brain shuts off. My nervous system, I'll fall asleep a lot. I'm just douche because I feel 100% safe just because he's in the room. For him, that started creating stress because he's like, I have this total badass woman, and then like, where did your brain go? And so we've had to even establish, hey, what does that mean? And he's like, can you maybe not turn it off so hard? Except for, like, let's set aside some time where, you just fall asleep and you do your thing. But if we're in a foreign country, maybe stay a little bit more alert. And it's been a really powerful conversation for us to have where, he needs the rest too, for his mind. But safety to him and to me are two totally different things. My body doesn't make him feel safe. His body makes me feel like G.I. Joe's in the room and I'm totally fine. That's a totally different experience of the same situation, right? So, and for the most part, being a responder is like, you guys, a badge walks in and even now I'm like, hell yeah, I'm good. And you need space off from that, probably entirely, just from that decision space. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. It sounds like he needs to become one of your clients so he can get that badass person on a more regular basis. He needs to walk in and get treatments and be like, hey.
He does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you got to run in a little bit, so I want to wrap things up. But just any exciting projects you can share of where the Six is going, and then I'm also curious, just how can we support you? Anybody that's listening, or how can we get more people in to the Six? How can we promote the Six and make other agencies more aware of it? Because obviously you're disrupting the paradigm, and that's what we want.
Yeah. The biggest thing, and from a business perspective, we still scaled down all of our charge for responders. We have the whole time we've been open, because now we're doing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, probably 500 to 700 sessions a month with responders, and growing. Anytime we can close a contract with any business, it helps us serve more. So I set up the company in such a way that success equals more generosity. And that's what we're looking for from anybody. So anybody that comes in, especially in the civilian space, it lets us care for our responder. So bodies in here, come in, let us treat you. That's amazing. The other thing that we would love to do, and I would love to do, is take on more departments as we're piloting through. We've got 5 right now. We've got a large number of stations and departments, but we're really honing in on how do we pilot this and scale this. It's been absolutely phenomenal. But introductions to departments that will let us come in and pilot our program with them. It's a combination of tech, and then we actually bring a team in and create relationship, do bodywork treatments, have coaches come in. We always sit with the peer teams that are in there with the EAP, create relationship, and then take off with that tech. That's what we're looking to do. So an introduction to departments looking to cut their workers' comp down. We do take workers' comp. We usually will work with a whole city to get a department in too. We've done that pretty quick. We can close contracts within weeks if we need to, because we're poised to do that right now. The tech piece is really our baby right now. And that's, again, about 60 to 90 days out of ready to launch in a beta sense. So people that want to check that out, if you know cops and firefighters that would give us feedback for that, I'd love to send it to you, have you pilot it, see what you think about it. Feedback is huge. I always want to be the best. So I'm like, yep, how can we improve this? You're a coach, so obviously I'm like, yes, please tell me personally what you think. And then, again, get the introductions to other departments. We're talking to a couple out in the Bay Area in the next couple of weeks, and I'm excited to grow. So.
Yeah, so cool. And Sonya, just for people that don't know, you guys are based right now in Sonoma County in California, right? So
yes.
If people want to come to your brick and mortar, that's where they can find you if they want to learn more as well.
They can find me in Santa Rosa, California. And we do via tech, we have a pretty big reach. So we will probably be nationwide in the next year or two. That's what we're assuming will happen. So don't let your location stop you from reaching out. We would love to be with all the people.
Yeah. And just one last thing I want to highlight before I let you go is, you were kind of saying that it's important that our success leads to more generosity. And, a lot of people don't know this about you, but you've been doing this for free for like a decade, with your foundation. And it's only recently that you actually started taking a paycheck. So I just want people to understand, like your generosity speaks volumes. You've been doing this for a long, long time through a foundation that has now started to pay, dividends and pay you a salary, which you absolutely deserve. But I just want to highlight like the work that you've done has been transformational, and you've been doing it without making any money. So kudos to you, and just thanks. That just shows how big your why is and why you're here.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think we calculated I have given away about $1 million so far. And that's the most proud moment. And if we can quadruple that, it would just mean the whole entire world. I am a firm believer in one person changing the world, and here I come. So
let's go. Sonya McVay from the 6. Amazing. Thanks for being on the show. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Joel. Appreciate it.